Let's get your film agitated. No, I don't mean mad. Let's shake it up. Welcome to the Naked Photographer, where I'll be exposing myself. No, I won't. That sounded better in my head. So if you're using a metal tank like this that can be inverted, which means we have a small cap to keep all the liquid inside the tank, then agitation is what we call inversion. That means flip it all the way over, flip it all the way back. You do not want to agitate your film like a martini. This is not going to be shake it up like that. All you're going to do is create foam, which will ruin your film ultimately. Agitation is simply to get fresh liquid on the film as it's developing. A chemical reaction happens in between to transform the silver salt into metallic silver, but it exhausts the chemical in direct contact with the emulsion. So all the agitation does is to stir it up a little bit at regular intervals in order to make sure that your film develops evenly and at the rate that you expect it to. You do not want to shake it vigorously. That can affect your contrast in a negative way or an unpredictable way, or create foam, which can create a weird bubbly pattern on your actual images. So you're going to simply just flip it over and flip it back. Now, how often? How fast? There's some debate about that. As long as you are consistent, you're fine. There are two published methods. There's Ilford, which states you want to flip it over and back 4 times in 10 seconds. That looks something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Set it down with a good tap to get the bubbles loose, and then just let it sit for the rest of the minute. When it gets back to the top of the minute, you're going to do it again 4 times in 10 seconds. And you do that every minute on the minute until your developing time ends. Kodak, on the other hand, has a completely different method. They have a little bit more vigorous agitation cycle. Instead of 4 times in 10 seconds, they're going to say, do it 5 times in 7 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Set it down and then leave it alone. It's then going to get down to the end of 30 seconds and you're going to do it again. So you do it half as long, but twice as many times per minute. It is a little bit more vigorous, but as long as you do it every time, be consistent. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Set it down, get the bubbles up off your film. As long as you do it the same way every time, then your results will be consistent from roll to roll. And that's really what it is that you want. Consistency from roll to roll. So what if you don't have a tank with an invertible lid, such as the Kodak Kodacraft roll? There's no small lid to keep the liquid in, so if you invert it, all the liquid pours out. In this case, you're not going to invert it. Instead, you're going to move it in a figure-8 pattern on the table in about a 10-inch area. Very small, kind of a tight area. That's about 250 millimeters, 25 centimeters. You're going to do it for 5 seconds. So put the film in, put the tank in, pour in your liquid, and then tap it just to be sure, and then do that again at the 30-second mark. So just a small figure 8, right? Figure 8 pattern So if you're looking at it from the top, it's going to be figure 8 in a small section, about hip to hip, shoulder to shoulder. That should do it for you. Now, other kinds of plastic tanks, like this, they can be inverted. However, they lose a lot of liquid when you do that into the funnel area. They also come with this little peg, which fits down in a hole. And what this does is it causes your reels to turn inside. So to use this method, simply start your timer and for 5 seconds just turn it back and forth, and then wait for the time to get back to the 30 seconds. Or if you're using the Ofer method, 10 seconds long and then 10 seconds again every minute, whichever one you go with. Simply twist back and forth about a quarter turn, and that will agitate your film properly. If you're using a rotary tank, such as this from Jobo, then you have a couple of different rotary methods to use. One, simply lay it on its side. Now you'll see that this is tilted. There is an accessory ring that you can get, or you just put rubber bands around it. Lay it on the table and simply roll it back and forth during your agitation. Now, rotary methods don't use 5 to 10 seconds of intermittent agitation. Instead, they use constant. So you're going to roll back and forth non-stop for your entire development time. Not too vigorously, just side to side. Just let it roll back and forth. I would at least get a full roll by using the label as a marker. So it's at the top now, roll it at least until it's at the top again. Another method would be to use a roller such as this. You can make one on your own. This is actually made by Jobo. There are Chinese ones available online on eBay and such. You simply set this down on there and then roll it in place. When you're done, you pour your chemistry out, pour the next one in, set it down, and do it again. You can reverse the direction halfway through or keep it constant. Just not vigorously. Just keep it at an even, steady pace. Alternative to that would be a motorized version. So this is simply a Bessler unicolor roller. You just set it on there, turn on the switch, and it will roll it for you. Some, like this particular model, will reverse the direction partially through. So that's another option for rotary development. You can do this for rolls, sheets, whatever you need. For large ones like this, of sheets, you can use the motor control. You can also use the wheeled base again. These are wheels that have little arms on them. These just pop right out. These pop in. You can adjust the width. In this case you would need to, because it's not a very wide tank. And then you just roll it on there. Just make sure you adjust the width so that this doesn't fall off as you do it. For single sheet development, you're going to put the film into the tray, start the timer, and lift the edge closest to you, about 3/4 off the table. When the second hand gets to the 15-second mark, or the 3 on the clock, you're going to lift the 3 o'clock side about 3/4 of an inch off the table. And continue that way around the clock. When it gets to the 30-second mark, lift the 6 o'clock position of the tray. At the 45-second mark, lift the 9 o'clock position, 3/4 of an inch. At the 12 o'clock, you can lift furthest from you or just continue to lift closest to you. And just work your way around every 15 seconds, rocking one side of the tray and then the other. Do that continuously through the entire developing time for one sheet development. After it's done, drain the film and put it into the next tray. For multiple sheets of film, put in one piece after the other, making sure each one is fully submerged. Start your timer, and then begin to shuffle the film from bottom to top. Submerging each one in turn to keep it under development. You want to do this at a slow but steady pace through the entire developing time. Now what I like to do is try to divide 30 seconds by the number of sheets of film that I use. So if I have 4 sheets of film, then I would rotate the entire stack once through that 30 seconds. So that's about every 8 seconds or so I would put a piece of film from bottom to top. If I had 6 sheets of film, I would do it at every 5-second mark, ensuring that the entire stack was rotated at least once every 30 seconds. Partway through the developing time, you can lift the entire stack, rotate it 90 degrees so that you don't get any kind of flow marks from sheet to sheet. If you're using a large tank such as this, you're going to develop for the first 30 seconds of your time by lifting the tank, by lifting the rack. Leave the tank alone. Lifting the racks inside the tank about an inch up out of the tank and just letting them drop against the tank each time, just with gravity. That will dislodge any air bubbles that are gripping the film to keep the developer from leaving marks on there. So 30 seconds constantly, up and down about an inch. Then every minute after that, on the minute, you want to lift the rack completely out, tilt it 30 degrees, and let it drain for about 5 seconds. Drop it back in, lift it 30 degrees the other way, 5 seconds, drop it back in, and then lift it up and back. The whole cycle should take about 15 seconds. You're going to do that every minute. So lift up, tilt, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then up and back down. This will provide enough agitation for the sheet film, and by varying which way you tilt it, will keep there from being consistent flow marks. If you only go one direction, you might end up with flow marks on your film, and you really kind of want to avoid that. If you're using a large tank, this is a small half-gallon tank, there are larger 3.5-gallon tanks meant for 8x10 film. You can get specialized racks to hold your individual racks for that. So you can process up to 12 sheets of film at a time, up to 8x10 in size, as well as up to 36 rolls of 35mm film, if that's what you're looking to process, if you have a large number of rolls to develop at one time. So, to recap, there are a few different key things you need to do in order to get your film consistent each and every time. And that really is what we're after. consistency from one roll to the next. That's what keeps us able to predict what we're going to get as a result. We're really talking about a chemical process, and if you remember anything from chemistry, it is time, temperature, and consistent action. We'll get repeatable results, and that's what we're after. Repeatable results every time. So whether you use a large tank like this, a small tank that you want to invert, a small tank that you need to shuffle in a figure 8, or a large tank that you need to roll on the table. Just make sure you do the same thing every time. Keep your method consistent, keep your time accurate, and you should have a good roll of film every time. If you are having inconsistent results and everything else is correct, check your agitation. That can always be a big culprit. As long as you do it the same way every time, you should be fine. There are other factors to consider. We'll talk about that in another video. But for now, thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And thanks again for watching The Naked Photographer. Have a good night.